Few.
And I'm Giggleklutz.
And today we are talking about open worlds in gaming.
Yep.
As opposed to the open world we have here in real life.
Dude.
Well, I mean, technically it is true.
Most days I wish I had a linear story.
Which is ironic, considering. But then again, no, it's not. Okay, anyway, sorry, I'm sidetracking everything, and this is going to happen a lot in the open worlds episode, because it's a lot.
Much like the game, the description and discussion is non-linear.
Yeah.
There's a lot to get into.
So let's start with our collective ideas around, rather than definition, because we discovered that we don't like any of the definitions of what makes an open world, and a few quick examples of what games we consider open world, or relatively open world.
One of the things that we definitely said is that it has one large unified game space, because if it's cut into too many similar sized sections, those are typically levels, and that's kind of against part of what makes a game feel open world.
Yeah.
I mean, a bit of that I'd like to consider is sort of the gating between the areas. It's like they're distinctly sectioned off and have a lot of specific progression things you need to reach them.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm okay if an open world still has a lot of distinctively placed loading zones in it.
Yeah, like, let's go with, like, an Elder Scrolls example here. Like, you need to go through loading zones to get into dungeons, and sometimes even in these dungeons you need to unlock them first. That's fine. Open world games it's fine if, like, there are some areas you need to unlock. But switch to another example of Pokemon Legends Arceus, where they introduce you to a large area, 5 different large areas in a consecutive order, and you have to progress the story to unlock the next one. That's not what I would qualify as an open world, even if it has open levels.
Right. And my big thing as to what makes open world is, like, the majority of the map is open to you all the time. It's that interacting with the story is kind of optional in open worlds. If you have to do the storyline in order to make the game work, then that doesn't feel open world to me.
Yeah, it's like the main storyline or the main quest needs to ultimately ends up kind of being like a side quest with more production value.
Yeah. Yeah. I would totally agree.
Like, that's interesting, because then by, like, your interpretation of this, that does get in the way of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which is at the time of talking about this, is the latest installment of the Pokemon series, where they have actually tried to do an open world. But in order to be able to actually use all your Pokemon, you need to do story stuff, because they won't obey you, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Well, it's like, it's going to be loose. It's discussion around it. It's not rules. So, can we give examples of open worlds before we get into more discussion? We've talked about Elder Scrolls games. Then we consider Minecraft as open world.
Outer Wilds is an open world.
Despite the fact that it's about moving through space, and each planet you could consider a level in and of itself.
You can access them after the tutorial in any order you want.
Right, which makes it open world. It's like Stardew Valley. There's some places you have to open up to get into them, but they fit in within that same category because the whole world mostly is open to you right away.
Open world is not the big thing you stamp on that as like, this is what the game is and what it's about so much, but...
It just happens to kind of fall into it for the most part, because most of your gameplay falls into Pelican Town, and it's there.
An open world can be the genre of the game, but it doesn't have to. It can just kind of be an approach to its gameplay space.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But another thing that we're not going to talk about because we don't have a lot of experience with these is MMOs. A lot of MMOs are actually an open world, but I have not played many of those.
No.
They're a huge time sink, and I don't have that kind of time because I'm playing different open world games.
You've just strategized your energy and your time differently. than MMOs.
Yeah, but I thought it was worthy to mention that there's a lot of MMOs that are open world.
Yeah. Which makes sense. So...
Yeah. So, I wanted to talk about tutorials, Shuckle, so,
Yeah, a lot of open world games have to limit you at first. I know we were just talking about how we think open world games don't really section themselves off, but there's an exception for the tutorial, where many open world games give you a small section to learn about the mechanics before they unleash you upon the universe. Noteworthy examples can include the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild, the sewer in Oblivion.
Elder Scrolls Oblivion.
Yeah, Elder Scrolls Oblivion, yeah. Yeah, good call for that. Yeah, there could be an Oblivion somewhere out there that just so happens to also be open world. I don't know.
Neither do I, but it's good to mention that that's the series because there's a lot of...
Jeez, lay off the beans, man.
So Elder Scrolls itself is kind of the definition of open world. You know, they're one of... I don't know. I don't want to add quantifiers to that kind of conversation, but they definitely have tutorial issues.
Yeah, like, let me just say some of the things that the tutorials that I'm thinking of have in common. So these tutorial areas often provide you a safe place where you can discover aspects such as combat or stealth or just in general what hazards exist in the world, while giving you lots of options to fall back on, like healing resources or social encounters. It depends on the game. But it just, in general, lifts a lot of the constraints of the pressures of having everything at your fingertips all at once. It narrows your scope for just long enough to know what the game is about that you're about to get into. So going back to the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, for example, the game is primarily based on combat, so they do allow you time to find out what different equipment does, how stealth works, and allow you to take out some rats. And it's a pretty classic RPG style, and it also introduces you to the story while just giving you some time to see what dungeons are like. And most of your loot typically comes from dungeon crawling, so it makes sense to have your tutorial also be a little dungeon. While meanwhile, with games like Breath of the Wild, where the area's a lot bigger, it also gives you a chance to learn about cooking, ambushing enemies using terrain around you, climbing, and there's a lot more to uncover.
All your superpowers and all of that kind of stuff.
But these tutorials make it so that way, when you actually hit the open world, you should have everything in your toolkit that you need.
Or at least most everything.
Yeah, almost
Sometimes
everything.
they hold a few things back, so yeah. But anyway, yeah, a decent toolkit to give you the best shot of navigating this world they're dumping you in.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for, still sticking with the Breath of the Wild example, they give you the paraglider, and that is what I would say, it feels mandatory for this game because of just how ridiculous these situations can get, and it allows you to slow things down and observe what you're going to need to do or get out of danger, and it's really, really meaningful and symbolic because, like, it also is like a very prominent display of freedom that they give you with this paraglider that allows you to leave the tutorial. It feels impactful, like you've done something important.
Yeah, of course, it's like, opens up a bunch of new movement options. You can now dodge fall damage. It synergizes with Link's climbing abilities in the game, where, yeah, you can get up to a high place and then paraglide off of it to get more distance.
Oh my gosh, and don't get me started on it can be really difficult to play more than one open world game at a time because the brain set of one set of options can conflict with another. Like, you try playing Skyrim after playing Breath of the Wild for a while. You can't just climb on anything because you're nearby, and there ain't no paraglider. And
yeah, yes, I played, like, brief mentions here of Tears of the Kingdom. I played quite a bit of that, but I keep trying to ascend in games that don't have ascend, and I get frustrated. It's so convenient. Why has no game thought of this before?
Oh, but it's so weird also. I just want to talk about who came up with that? Where did that come from? Okay, if you've never played Tears of the Kingdom, where have you been? What are you doing? If you have a Switch and you have not bought this game, I'm shaking my hands. I'm like, what?
I am so sorry you're not in a comfortable position to spend $70 for fun.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like, oh my gosh, I hope you find it soon because, oh, yes, what are you doing? Why are you not, mostly, it's like, also, here's your warning, your danger warning. This game will suck you in and you will use a lot of your life hanging around Hyrule.
This game eats spare time for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
I am amazed that we have been able to share a Switch as comfortably as we have been.
Yeah, if you guys didn't play this game too, I would be all the time, and I might miss my streams sometimes.
Well, then I'm doing you a service, of course. I'm always just playing before you get up in the morning, so...
Mm-hmm. It helps that the battery's out when I get up.
Just doing my part.
So yeah, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are the, most recent, and they're like, open world Legend of Zelda games. I figured we mentioned that with the Elder Scrolls, so it felt weird not at least bringing that up once.
Right. It's just, yeah.
Well, I mean, like, the issue with saying, like, Oblivion is it's a way more generic. There's probably some Oblivions out there. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom are a lot more distinctive a name.
Yeah, thank you. It's all good. It's all fine.
Yeah, if nothing else, it was bugging me, so I put it in the episode, deal with it.
Yeah.
So this is an example of our non-linear discussion here. And it also is a perfect example of these games giving you a little bit of space to run around before you go into the main meat of the game. Just giving you examples of what is out there before you have to deal with everything all at once. And most open world games have at least a little bit of this, like a little flavor of this linear tutorial. And of course it varies in length depending on the game as well. But most of the time they will hit these beats of, these are your options for this game, here's how you use them, and have fun.
And introduce you to the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whether or not you actually do it is up to you.
Most people will. I'm just weird. I mean,
I don't know. I know primarily we're thinking about, like, or I'm thinking about Elder Scrolls about this, and just like, yeah, I don't do Elder Scrolls story.
Right,
like,
well, yeah. I mean, I'm an extreme case, though. I mean, I use this as an example, but it'll tell you something about me, I guess, is that, I played hundreds of hours of Oblivion. Love Oblivion. Really loved that game. It was... I miss aspects of it, even as I play Skyrim. Is that, I never even started the main quest. Once I got out of the tutorial, I didn't even go to Kvatch. I never... And if you don't, it doesn't trigger any of the next story stuff at all. And so I just wandered around Oblivion like it was before the story even started. So I got to live in Cyrodiil and not deal with any of the political stuff or any of that. And it was just fine. I assume it changed what my game experience would have been, but it also is all mine. I don't know anybody else that's ever played quite like that. But yeah, it's that's how I do. Because like most of my plays around in Skyrim also have been interacting with the main quests only a little bit. Usually I start and I try, and then after you do diplomatic immunity, if you've played, that's the Thalmor embassy quest. Yeah, once you get that far, I'm just like, I'm done with this. I don't care about the story. And that's, yeah, it's kind of a natural progression from tutorial into story. And it's the thing I find interesting about open worlds is it gives you the option whether or not to interact with the story. And because that's always there, it makes open world games a very difficult vehicle to tell a meaningful story. And I would present as an idea that that's fine. I think that they're not good vehicles for storytelling at all. I mean, they tell stories because they guess they have to, but it's rarely in an open world the most engaging part of the game, no matter how much thought or work you put into it, because I think Elder Scrolls Skyrim really put a lot of work into that storyline. I just was never interested in it. I'm like, I always play as an Argonian because I like to explore a lot, including underwater, and I don't want to ever have to worry about breathing. I don't ever want to worry about drowning and that kind of thing. I'm guessing I have some triggers around that. I don't know, but I never want to have to worry about it, so I always play an Argonian so I never have to.
And plus, that disease resistance is very good.
Get diseases all the time anyway, though. You know how many times I've had rock joint? Oh my god.
Still, though, can you imagine how many diseases you'd get without being an Argonian?
I guess. I mean, I just would have to carry a complete pouch of cure disease all the time, which I do always have a couple of those on. I mean, because, whoop whoop, I am alchemy queen. It's like, yeah, but because I don't play the stories, my point was, getting dropped into this game where I'm supposed to be interested in a civil war that has nothing to do with me, and it doesn't make any sense that I would be able to navigate the space with the body that I have at all, no less as privileged as I do, really kills my immersion into the story anyway.
It's like you're this in your case, like, you're a non-native person who's like just a nobody that happened to get caught up in something by accident.
Right, and then they expect you to take sides in the Civil War. And for context, I'm going to say, if you don't know anything about the Elder Scrolls, Argonians are lizard people from a province called Blackmarsh in Tamriel. And Tamriel is the whole country united that has different sections of it. It's kind of like a unified Europe rather than a country like we'd think of it.
Yeah.
But, the Empire, the Emperor rules over all these countries. Blackmarsh is the country that the Argonians come from. I've only played Oblivion and Skyrim. I haven't played any of the others, so I don't really know. I mean, I know all the history because all the books carry from game to game. Anyway, side point, the reason I brought that up was that the lizard person thing is that Skyrim, the culture of the country of Skyrim, is very racist. And very insular. So the idea that they even want an Argonian taking sides in their civil war kind of seems ridiculous if you're going to be culturally literate about the space that they're in. And they work so hard on the world building in the Elder Scrolls that have such rich cultures and history and all of that, which, oh my gosh, if you don't know anything about it, there are literal books scattered all over these worlds that you can read. And it'll teach you about history, and it'll teach you about all these things.
Yeah, just being in Skyrim, like, I played through, in the game, like, I didn't play through the story at all, but I did have 2 characters that I messed around with. So I also had an Argonian, but I also had a Dark Elf, and it was really, really weird as both of these characters having, like, the towns have these racist sentiments to these populaces, but not you. And it's felt very, like, it just made me feel like I wasn't part of the world.
It breaks the immersion. Yeah, when you think about it too hard. That's why I could never look at my character in third person. I always had to play first person. Because you have the option of whether or not you pull the camera back from the eyes of your character into being able to see, third person you, camera drone behind you kind of idea, which is how you play the open world Zelda games, where you get to see Link most of the time, not always, but most of the time. So anyway, yeah, I find them not very good vehicles for storytelling.
I will say that I do feel like they're, just like any of these points, there's always, like, an exception when it comes to open world games, and my exception on this story front is Outer Wilds.
Which I'm in the middle of a playthrough, so we will get to Outer Wilds in much more detail later, and Honeyshuckle can make her points then about that.
I think the simplest way to just summarize it here is the stuff you find in the open world is story.
Yeah, and just to briefly say it, I think that's beautiful.
Right. It's because it's environmental storytelling, not character-driven storytelling, and I think that that's the problem with both the Zelda ones and the Elder Scrolls ones, is they're trying to do character-driven storytelling in an open world, and it doesn't work. Like, for me, it's the world. I'm in it to be immersed in the world. I don't really give a crap about my character. You know, it's like my house is to store my stuff. It's not because I'm invested in a life in this place. Like, the idea that I could marry someone really drives me nuts. Aside from the fact that I get stuck in ruts as I do, and I always take Lydia and the dog, and I run around forever with both of them, and they level up with me so much it would be silly to let them go. But anyway, the idea of, like, actually feeling like I live there, or like I care about the feelings of my character, it's like, no, this is just a vehicle that I use to navigate this world, that nothing I do in it really matters. And you could be said, well, of course nothing matters because you don't play the story. And I'm like, I don't give a crap about the story, though.
It's like, you can get immersed in the little things, too.
And I do.
You know, I think to a certain extent, it's like, you know, this really comes up in relation to, like, open worlds and stuff. Big overarching stories in terms of immersion are kind of overrated.
Or they can be.
Yeah, it's like, it's not like they aren't great vessels for that kind of immersion, you know, making an immersive experience, something you can really get into like that. It's just not the only thing. You know, I think that's important to keep in mind. Just like, assuming something has to be human to convey emotion was another similar thing I had in the back of my head.
Ooh.
That doesn't really fit in this episode. It's
okay.
Tangentially related. Side quest complete, anyway.
So you want to talk about how you approach open world, Sackbot?
So yeah, basically, an open world, you know, how it typically goes is like, yeah, when it actually opens up and gets to be that open world the game is supposed to be, the gameplay experience going forward is a lot more of what you make of it at that point. And, you know, pretty much no matter what the medium is, I like making things. And, you know, one of the things I love, like, making in, you know, something like, you know, particularly in the open world Zelda games is, plans to go into places I'm not prepared for and getting myself killed.
I can attest to this, the amount of times I have walked into the living room to just see Sackbot there in, like, some completely gloom or malice-ridden environment is a lot.
It's like, hey, here's this place that's, like, obviously a late game area. How do I get in there without being completely massacred?
And then you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I only completed, like, one main quest line in both the open world Zelda games before I went after the final boss. It's like, you know, because I like making things way too difficult for myself on a regular basis, and also, whatever kind of game is gonna let you do that.
Yeah, like, even talking about, like, the Elder Scrolls games, that, like, their ending is heavily gated behind its story, whereas Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are just like, yeah, your goal's there, go do it whenever you feel ready.
And it's like, well, it's kind of because they messed up the tutorial a bit in Tears of the Kingdom. It's like, you can get into the final area somewhat before you even have your full kit available.
Yeah, I'll get more into that caveat of a tutorial in a future episode.
It's much better if you have it for that, though. It's like, you need to, you know, find some creative solutions if you want to survive the journey in.
Don't ask me, because I will probably never finish it. Ever. It's like, I'm trying to think, it's like, if the game doesn't make me finish it, I might never. Which is interesting to me, because, in some aspects I end up being completionist, you know, and I think games sometimes give me an excuse to let some of that go, but it's so funny when that keeps up, because I'll give myself other goals when I don't fit in with that one, you know. It's like, what am I really spending my time doing in these games, right? If I'm not, I didn't even talk about how I'm not really into the combat, you know. It's like, but I'm not.
Yeah, like, didn't My uncle, your brother, pitch Elder Scrolls Oblivion to you as a game where you can run around and pick flowers.
Yes, he gave me his copy of Oblivion because he didn't have time to play it, thinking I would like it because I could wander through the woods and pick flowers. And in all honesty, that is what I spend most of my time doing. I mean, I was even singing my own little song, imagining I was a streamer, not actually being a streamer, wandering through Skyrim, singing, "She's an alchemist in Skyrim," and and I was just letting Dog and Lydia kill things that I would attract while I ran around picking all the flowers. And
this only works because your companions can't die unless you kill them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But we were high enough level while I'm doing that really the things that they were up against were no big deal for them, you know. And I'm really glad the companions can't kill each other unless you hit them and get them, you know. But yeah, that's what I do is I run around and I collect things. I'm looking for secret areas. I like exploring all the little nooks and crannies of a place, but sometimes not obsessively so. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, and it's like that's the kind of thing that comes with the nonlinear nature of open worlds is that, yeah, and something with a more straightforward campaign, it's going to lead you to all the big things in the game in a sequence. It's like in open worlds, you can find them out of order or just by complete accident. It's like you can stumble across a, important thing in the world, and it's just something you found on your journey. It's not a part of the story they wrote for you, it's the part of the story you made for yourself.
Is this going to end up being talking about the 1000 Torch quest, or...
Oh, well, yeah, I had this tendency to make my own quests. Like in Skyrim, I just recently completed my self-imposed quest of collecting 1 million coins. So I have 1 million gold in Skyrim, and, it's like, I got a strategy, man. And... And, and in Oblivion, it was torches didn't weigh anything, so I was trying to collect 1,000 of them. I succeeded in making 1 million gold. I did not succeed in getting 1,000 torches. I gave up Oblivion before I got that far.
I just think it's very silly, and that's why it's stuck with me this long.
Silly? Me? Aww.
I wonder where I get it from.
I have no idea.
Neither do I. So, yeah, the thing about, with me getting into difficult situations in, open world games like that, it's like, it's something that a level of difficulty the game wouldn't give you otherwise, or just, if it ends up being kind of self-imposed, it's like, more of what you'd want out of the experience, so you can tailor it for yourself. If it's just something you're trying out, you don't have to get frustrated and keep banging your head against the wall. You can just stop and go do something else.
Right, and you can make your own goals, and you can decide what you want out of the experience and arrange your gameplay for that. It's customizable. I mean, there's trade-offs in how that works. Like I said, it's not as immersive storytelling when you do that. And I would say that, I don't know, it seems like it was just me. I've talked to lots of people who, I'm thinking of Skyrim specifically again, it's like really could imagine themselves as the player character, and I never could. For me, it's all about the world. And, I know those two things are related, the fact that I'm not engaging with the entire game the way it was designed, but that's going to be my gameplay style in open worlds. I'm doing the same thing in Tears of the Kingdom. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to find all the montages and whatever, and I think that that's lovely storytelling, but I really enjoy finding them too, so just you get the story in Tears of the Kingdom gets kind of exposed to you as you go and find, and it's this way in Breath of the Wild too, is you find specific spots on the map that then let you be exposed to memories, so they show the story to you in montages or cutscenes or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, most people typically call it cutscenes.
Yeah, well...
But, I mean, I guess if you are doing, like thinking about it in a cinematic sort of way, this would be the most montage-like thing you get in video games.
Yeah, but you're right, it's cutscenes. Whoops.
Yeah. It's okay.
Is this a montage?
No, that's the ceiling.
Man, this is It's like, oh my god, you folks at home must be loving this visual gag that's just happened here. It's like, aren't you laughing your butts off?
What? Like the meme isn't gonna get made. I'm just saying. I'm giving you permission to make the meme, because you're gonna.
You have permission to make fun of me on the internet.
Yes. Or we wouldn't be here. Anyway, in case you didn't know, there are memes for every single episode that we've made, I think. Yeah, available on the blog. It's one of the major things we use the blog for, is putting those memes together, and they've gotten richer as we've gone along, I think.
My friends like them. Are you my friends?
You don't have to be her friends to like the podcast. I'm just gonna say that.
It's like that. I'm not sure what that's doing right there, but be careful with that.
It could be an open world approach to making friends.
Inviting trolls and then asking them if they'll be your friend? That just doesn't sound like a great strategy to me. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Maybe you can come up with your own quest line that goes a little bit nicer to you, is what I would say.
Okay, so, suppose I have something specific about Just Cause 3 that's an open world game of like that I want to get into. It's about, how its sort of main story, its main campaign, is oof.
It's oof.
So yeah, the beginning of it is, it does kind of a tutorial thing. It does not really put you in an isolated space, but in the beginning, when it is first, getting you used to the controls and the main tools and mechanics you'll be using for most of the game, it leads you directly into those tutorial missions back to back and tells you essentially that they're going to be tutorial missions that unlock stuff for you. And then it, points you to two areas you need to interact with that are going to be common reoccurring things. Oppressed towns and military bases. Well, actually, that one's a military power plant, but yeah, it's an asset that, the regime you're trying to overthrow in the game is using. I'm focusing on some of the wrong elements here, but basically, yeah, you get this whole arsenal of tools, this, movement things, like explosives you can plant, grappling hook, tethers to stick physics objects together and fling them around. All this stuff you can, conduct ridiculous antics with. So yeah, there's this big open world that's like your playground full of things to find. And then the story missions in the game are about asking you to do very specific things and babysit NPCs.
Oh, isn't that everybody's favorite?
Oh, boy, escort missions are my favorite.
So, yeah, I think, this could quite literally be the case. I would not be surprised. I haven't checked the credits, but I might actually want to, is that the story missions and the open world stuff feel like they were made by different teams. Distinctly, that, did not think about your main character's arsenal of tools that they had at their disposal at any given time when they were making the story missions. So you barely are supposed to use any of them. You can get yourself in trouble if you try.
Yeah, I'm gonna just compare this to stuff that I've, done in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, where you do still have your entire arsenal, and if you do use it, it's definitely not intended, but it still works.
It's yeah, that's great.
Yeah, just a sort of counterpoint as to what you might expect to happen versus the reality that you're talking about here, right?
Yeah. Thinking about, this one level in, Just Cause where you're supposed to be, following this convoy, and you're kind of supposed to be on it the whole time. But it's one of the things you can do is grapple onto and hijack enemy vehicles. That's a main thing you can do a lot to remove those threats and, blow stuff up real easy. But it's it's this thing that you'll probably have a lot of muscle memory to do. Every time you see a chopper, if you hijack it, you kick the pilot out, and then you can just crash it into something if you want to get rid of it. And then it's no, you need to be on this one set of slow-moving vehicles going through a tunnel, so you have to ditch the chopper. and you better keep up with it because it's going to move on without you, and you don't want to start the mission over.
I see what you mean, though. It does sound like they were written by people who had no contact with how the rest of the game goes. Because, I mean, if you don't know anything about Just Cause, the Just Cause games, I mean, and I only know peripherally from watching over somebody's shoulder while they play, they're secret agent, right? Type, action. It's like you took a secret agent type action movie and you made it into a goofy video game where there's lots of chase scenes and fight scenes and
grappling hook.
Well, yeah, it goes goofy.
Lots and lots of beautifully rendered explosions.
Right, yes, exactly. It just, the amount of laughter that came around the playing of that game, I get happy thinking about the Just Cause games. I've never touched a single one. But anyway, I'm just, just letting you, putting some context on what he's talking about here, because as he's describing this, I'm thinking, he's like, oh my gosh, those story missions don't sound like anything about the kind of things that I saw you laughing about and really enjoying in any, cuts I've seen, or clips I've seen other people playing that game. It's all about the fun and the bouncing from here and there and the doing the crazy stuff. And it sounds like the missions are like the most boring part of the game. And why? Why is it that way? It just drives me nuts that that's one of the things that comes with open world.
Yeah, it's like the main campaign missions, it's like they've already given you all the cool stuff you get to use, so if you've been just out there enjoying the open world, you will have done all that already, and it's just not going to be in the main campaign at all. So it's like making you focus on it out there adamantly being the least interesting part of the game. When normally you're like just going from place to place, running into military settlements, and just, you clear them, you take them over by just blowing up all the stuff marked in red. It's like it is about just going in there and wrecking shop.
Oh my gosh, and that, I was just realizing that one thing that the story elements in open world games add in that just feels completely forced is urgency. Is they add this sense of urgency that all of a sudden happens. I'm thinking of, gosh, any of the quests, where like you're given limited access to an area often. There'll be just some building or some place that you can't normally go when you're finally doing a story quest, and all of a sudden I feel a sense of urgency because normally in the open world I can come and go as I choose. I'll be able to come back to this place if I missed something. I don't have to thoroughly search everywhere while all of a sudden feeling time pressure when normally there is none. That experience of the spirit of the world doesn't match the spirit of how you play the story missions or the quests, and that's not just Cause that does that. I'm finding that's kind of consistent through a lot of different open world games.
Like, I'm trying to remember quests in Skyrim, and all the ones I'm thinking of are like fetch quest kind of, there's this thing I need that's at the end of the dungeon, can you go get it for me? And I remember, having to escort NPCs through dungeons. I don't remember these people. I don't remember most of what I did in Skyrim.
Yeah. I don't think the story of Skyrim is very immersive at all. Maybe if you play it as a Nord, I have no idea. But even then, because you're just dropped in without any anchor into community anywhere, I don't know, that story just...
I do feel more connected in Tears of the Kingdom, for example, because there is a variety in some of the stuff they ask you to do. There are build quests, there are photography quests, there are cooking quests, there are some monster hunt quests, but most quests aren't combat-based. I'm sure that part of this is just because it's fresh in my mind, but I feel like I'm going to remember more of these quests for, dealing with parts of my environment rather than being an object to fetch.
And I mean, just thinking about, main quest stuff in, Tears of the Kingdom, it's that's, some of the best of that kind of thing I've, really experienced in an open world game, if you ask me. It's I feel like it's still a fleshed out experience that doesn't completely strip away all the stuff you were using to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, the dungeon design like, often requires you to use your special abilities, and that's really cool.
I think the developers played the game. I really do, in just the way that there's multiple acceptable solutions to almost everything lets me think that they really had, it was tested thoroughly.
So that's the thing about its attitude, is like, yeah, you'll come up to puzzles where you're supposed to do this specific thing, but it's like, well, they will try to put up stuff to make sure you do it the intended route. If you find a way past them, it's like, they're gonna put up barriers, but they're not gonna be petty if you pass them.
Yeah. Like, there's one point where I needed to make a lever by, like, sticking something to a pivot, and what I did was I just dropped a banana out of my inventory, attached that, and then spun the banana.
Oh man, it's like, I ran into a puzzle like that once, and I actually, like, dropped one of my weapons because it was kind of lever-like. You don't even need to do that.
No, it just needs to be something you can move, and I'm like, well, here's a banana.
It's like, yeah, that's, one of the reasons why, the game's so much fun and goofy is because, yeah, sometimes the puzzle solution is just glue a banana to it.
And it's art, right?
Sure, we can call it art. I'll stick enough bananas together and call it art.
So did you know about somebody duct taped a banana to an art museum wall to see if anybody would accept it as an art piece, and they did. Eventually they put a label on it thinking they forgot or accepting it or whatever. It's just social disobedience as art is. I like questioning what art should be, and
like, that's not the first one I've heard of this sort of thing. Like, somebody also, like, decided to leave their glasses in a corner and on the floor, and yeah, people looked at it as if it were art.
Well, it became art.
Yep.
It's an unintended by the artist and the gallery installation.
Mm-hmm.
Art is a matter of perspective.
Yeah, but we'll get into our thoughts on art, and we haven't decided how many episodes. It's going to be at least 2. But
yeah, we've got some stuff to work through.
Yeah. And they really want me to more focus on playing Outer Wilds, and we'd have to get over our intensity with Tears of the Kingdom, so we have some other things to do before the art episodes, but those are coming. But we, as you can tell, we do have thoughts about the nature of art and about what it means to be art and how video games fit on the spectrum of those ideas. And anyway, teaser for a whole series of things that will be coming up hopefully before the end of the year. The goal is to push it till later in the year, but
why don't we talk about what we're going to be talking about next time, then?
Oh, so next episode, we're going to be talking about the game I Am Dead.
And it's going to be a fun one, I think.
Which, if you don't know anything about the game, it sounds like it would be completely the opposite. But, it's...
I could just say, I've never played a game quite like this one before.
It's like, the relationship between its subject matter and its tone is incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, and we'll get into that
on the next episode.
On the next episode, yeah.
What have we been playing besides Tears of the Kingdom and Outer Wilds?
Was recently received a copy of Pizza Tower. I want to play that game, but I don't know when that will happen. Thanks for that, by the way.
I've been playing a lot of Cookie Clicker. If you know me, you know I like my incremental games, and that's a real classic, so I've kind of fallen back on that one for a little while. But of course, I bounce between my regulars with, like, Increlution and Leaf Blower Revolution as well. Why do all these end in Eon?
Because it's so easy to add that to things.
Incrementation.
Yeah. Whoa! Sean. That's a Sesame Street thing from a very long time ago. Yes, I'm old. I'm so old. I know, nobody believes me, but it's true.
Alright, what games have you been playing then?
Mostly just Tears of the Kingdom and Outer Wilds. That's been plenty, and then, I have other things to do, or to avoid doing, or whatever, and we've had life things that I've needed to deal with, and the stresses from that, so.
Yeah.
Life will get ya. Video games help. Anyway. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been Collab Not Multiplayer, and I'm Giggleklutz.
I'm Honeyshuckleex.
And I am Sackbot Barbecue.